If you want to transform your life, don't try and transform your life. Sound a little bit weird? Well, that's the advice of James Clear in his awesome book, Atomic Habits. Welcome to the Bite Size Sales Podcast, where we believe that sales is the most important team in a B2B company, that the sales team deserves great sales skills training, but usually doesn't get it, and that taking bite-sized steps each day to get better at your craft is the best way to improve results. I am your host, Andrew Monahan, and I'm using my experiences in B2B sales to bring you simple, actionable ideas every day to help you get better. All right, welcome to episode 29 of the podcast. And we're heading in towards the end of the year now, thinking about next year, which is why this concept, this idea on this morning's episode is one that I think is quite relevant. So stop me if this sounds familiar, right? You decide to make a big change in your life. Common ones in personal life might be lose weight, exercise more, things like that. In our work life, it might be, I want to double my income this year. I want to build a much bigger pipeline, or I want to call in higher in accounts that I'm used to doing and try and transform my results that way. And you have these big things you want to change. So what you do is you start out with big changes in your routine, right? You say, not that I'm going from, you say, I'm going to go to the gym every day this week for an hour. And I'm going to work out and pound the treadmill and lift some weights, right? Or if you're trying to build a bigger pipeline, you say, I'm going to prospect for 25 hours the next week. And you go at it and you get the emails going and make calls. And you do all these big things and then suddenly it fizzles out. And the changes you want to make in your routine don't actually stick. And it becomes tiring and hard work to try and maintain this huge big change that you were trying to make. And before you know it, you're back to your old ways. If you've experienced that, you've experienced what pretty much every human being faces when they're trying to make these big changes. We take on too much. We try and go from 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds in some new thing and somehow expect us to keep up with the 60 mile an hour. It's something that as humans, it doesn't really work very well. And this is something that James Clear addresses and talks about in his book, Atomic Habits. And in my mind, there's many books on habits, but Atomic Habits, in my mind, is one of the probably top 1 or 2, maybe top 3 books. And it's highly readable. It's awesome. It applies to all sorts of facets of our life. And it definitely applies in the sales world when we're thinking about how we make changes. And he talks clearly about the power of small habit changes as opposed to big ones, and how small changes are what will stick. It's what we'll commit to and follow through on, and then it's what you build on to get the results that you want. So let me just read a little bit from the book. It's a couple of pages, so stick with me. So the section is titled, Why Small Habits Make a Big Difference. It's so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment and underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. Too often we convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. Whether it is losing weight, building a business, writing a book, winning a championship, or achieving any other goal, we put pressure on ourselves to make some earth-shattering improvement that everyone will talk about. Meanwhile, improving by 1% isn't particularly notable. Sometimes it isn't even noticeable, but it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. The difference a tiny improvement can make over time is astounding. Here's how the math works out. If you can get 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times, not 37%, but 37 times better by the time that you're done at the end of the year. Conversely, if you get 1% worse each day for 1 year, you'll decline nearly down to 0. What starts as a small win or a minor setback accumulates into something much more. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. The same way that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. They seem to make little difference on any given day, and yet the impact they deliver over the months and years can be enormous. It's only when looking back 2, 5, or perhaps 10 years later that the value of good habits and the cost of bad ones becomes strikingly apparent. This can be a difficult concept to appreciate in daily life. We often dismiss small changes because they don't seem to matter very much in the moment. If you save a little money now, you're still not a millionaire. If you go to the gym 3 days in a row, you're still out of shape. If you study Mandarin for an hour tonight, you still haven't learned the language. We make a few changes, but the results never seem to come quickly, and so we slide back into our previous routines. Unfortunately, the slow pace of transformation also makes it easy to let a bad habit slide. If you eat an unhealthy meal today, the scale doesn't move much. If you work late tonight and ignore your family, they'll forgive you. If you procrastinate and put your project off until tomorrow, there will usually be time to finish it later. A single decision is easy to dismiss. But when we repeat 1% errors day after day by replicating poor decisions, duplicating tiny mistakes, and rationalizing little excuses, our small choices compound into toxic results. It's the accumulation of many missteps, a 1% decline here and there, that eventually leads to a problem. The impact created by a change in your habits is similar to the effect of shifting the route of an airplane by just a few degrees. Imagine you're flying from LA to New York. If a pilot leaving from LAX adjusts the heading just 3.5 degrees south, you'll land in Washington, D.C. instead of New York. Such a small change is barely noticeable at takeoff. The nose of the airplane moves just a few feet, but when magnified across the entire US, you end up hundreds of miles apart. Similarly, a slight change in your daily habits can guide your life to a very different destination. So that's read straight from the book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And this is such an important concept. And he goes on throughout the book to talk about the idea of tiny habits, and there's other work being done on this as well. There's a book coming out at the end of the year from BJ Fogg from Stanford about a book called Tiny Habits. And it's the idea that, rather than say I'm going to the gym for 2 hours tomorrow and every day, you want to think about what's achievable in 2 minutes. It could just be I get in the car and I drive to the gym, right? It could be for tomorrow, I sit down at 9 o'clock and I pick up the phone and make the first call. These small habits, when they start formulating into your psyche, you then build on and build on and build on. And I know people. I know one person who wanted to exercise more, and what he did was just go to the gym, go to the pool, and he said, I'm going to go just for 5 minutes until I feel uncomfortable, until I'm getting out of breath, and I'll get out and I'll go home. And I'll do that the next day and the next day and the next day. And now, 2 years later, he's there for an hour and a half every day, and fit as anything, full of energy and all the rest of it, right? So it's these things that you don't try and set yourself up for failure. You set yourself up for success, and then you build on them as you go along. So my challenge to you is, how do you take this concept of small habits, atomic habits in the James Clear terminology, and start using those to start making changes in your life? If you look at the big things you want to achieve going into 2020 and beyond, what are the real small things you can adjust right now that will have such a huge impact as you build on them and embed them in what you're doing going forward? This idea of doing small things to get big results, as opposed to doing big things to try and get big results, that's the way to get them. If you like this episode, please share it wide and far. Spread the word. I get energy from seeing people download and use this content, so please just take 20 seconds to share it with anyone you think would like it too. This episode is sponsored by Unstoppable.do. Most sales teams are not trained effectively in the skills and mindset they deserve, and these are the most important people in the company. It's no wonder that only about 50% of reps make quota every year. Unstoppable is a service that helps sellers and leaders get great at the skills and mindset they need without taking time out of the field. It exists because if the sales team has the right skills and mindset, they thrive, they are confident, and they perform much better. Find out more and even get a free sales book at bitesizesales.com. And now to wrap up, as Ryan Harvey, VP of Sales at Tanium, may or may not have once said, training without implementation is just entertainment, and pretty poor entertainment when Monahan does it. So make sure you take action on what you learn and keep getting better every day. This world does not need more sales BS, so don't create any more. Be great at the fundamentals, be honest, be real, be yourself, just do not BS. And finally, I'm signing off as the great Joe Sexton would by saying, gone to sell.